All right.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started. Welcome. Welcome.
No, I'm not.
So for those of you who may not know me, I'm Lisa Green, Town Administrator. I've been in Hanson for 4.5 years. I don't know where my 20 This is my second roundabout with presenting PowerPoint information, so hopefully I've got a little bit more together than the first time with the override. But tonight we are going to provide information on the MBTA Communities Act, which is the multifamily housing zone that the state is requiring MBTA communities to adopt. It's Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 3A. So under the MBTA Communities Act, this is mandatory multifamily zoning. Municipalities must adopt the zoning allowing multifamily housing by right to increase housing availability. Minimum density requirements. Zoning must allow a minimum density of 15 housing units per acre to ensure efficient land use. And zoning over construction. The law mandates zoning permissions, not actual housing construction, preserving local planning control. So basically what that means is the state is giving the town the control right now to determine where the zone is going to be. It has to be within a half mile of the MBTA commuter rail station. So right now the state's given the town the ability to decide and find the best area for that zone. And after I've presented our town planner, we'll talk about how he came up with the area. Next page, please. So unfortunately, there are a lot of myths that surround this zoning, this law. There's a lot of myths. So we want to really get the facts out there and hopefully wipe out the myths. So under the zoning requirement, the myth or the misconception or the misinformation that's out there is that the town's going to have to build or require landowners to build multifamily housing in the zone. That is not correct. That is not accurate. The fact is, the law requires that the town adopt zoning that allows multifamily housing by right. The law does not require mandatory construction of housing by the town or by any individual or company. Local control maintained. This is really important. The myth is adopting this means we have no local control about what is built, meaning any developer who comes into town can just go ahead and start building. That's not true. That's a myth. The fact is the town will retain authority through site plan review by the Zoning Board of Appeals, which means we still preserve local control over development. If the town does not adopt its own MBTA zoning, the state or other third party will end up dictating where the zone is located, as they did in Milton.
No.
If that happens, we will lose control over the zone, over where the zone is located. And what that means is, again, if the state comes in and it determines where the zone is going to be, the town will lose control over all of that. Right now, as it stands, if it's adopted, anyone who comes in with a plan still goes through the same process and scrutiny. They have to go to building, they have to go to planning, they have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So all that still stays intact. Under infrastructure funding, the myth is the town will be required to invest in infrastructure to support development in the MBTA community zone. Again, not accurate. The fact of this is infrastructure upgrades are not mandated. Developers will be the ones bearing the cost of necessary improvements themselves. So again, there's no plans for the town to build any housing. There's no requirement for the town to build any housing. There's no requirement for the town to put in any infrastructure to support housing. This is merely just creating a zone. Next page.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
What department of the state dictates the zoning in Milton? Like, what state entity came down and did that?
I don't know which one it was. I gather it could be the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, but it could be the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
Not sure. But Milton did end up adopting the zone.
So they adopted MBTA, or they had the state come in and do it?
They adopted the MBTA.
Okay. So they've never actually done it. The state's not done that yet?
Not yet.
But I do want to say that we had a conversation with the Attorney General a couple of weeks ago, and the office, I should say, not the Attorney General himself. And they were pretty clear that this is the path that they will be taking. They will sue, and if they are successful in suing the towns, they will then be appointing masters, and that's the blueprint that they plan on following. So, and that was the first time we had heard it that clearly said to us. It had been alluded to in the past, but it was pretty clear.
Okay. Just to follow up, the Attorney General and the Governor are up for election next year, so they're in, just calling that up.
And I've heard that quite a bit, like, oh, we should just wait until that changes, et cetera, et cetera. I think I would caution people from putting too much hope in that, because so many towns have adopted it and are in the process of adopting it, that the likelihood that somehow we're going to be an island unto ourselves and we will not get touched is pretty slim. But I have heard people say that, so I thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah. And, sorry, last one, I guess. I agree, I just don't think that's good PR when you're trying to run an election, that you're suing a town and then the whole town is in the business.
The whole scenario is riddled with many, many layers of problems. So we agree, but here we are. And I think there was another question. I don't know who it's for, but yeah.
No, I was just curious, this whole thing, who came up with these myths and facts? Where was this, who created this document?
There was a fact sheet that was up, that is out there, and honestly, it's our office put it together. And,
Right, because just
yeah.
like, not, I know this isn't a debate, you're just telling us, but like the infrastructure funding, I mean, that's not a fact. It's a fact, I'm not a contractor. So yeah, it's a fact that whoever, if I did this job and won it, that the developer would pay the cost of infrastructure. But if it's over in Phillips and you don't have the water and the power and the gas and all that, the town is going to pay for some of this.
there is no requirement under MBTA community for us to pay. Well, no, I understand what you're saying, but it depends on what town you're in, right? So we don't have town sewer, so we won't be doing anything with septic. I'm sorry?
There will be costs by the town on this, absolutely. Go pick one of them.
We don't do electrical, we don't do
We
sewer.
have it in the street from wherever it come from.
That's not a requirement for us to do any, we've got our attorney here, and she.
No, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, and again, I'm not trying to, but I'm just saying, I built a bunch of this, I'm doing a few of them now, it doesn't work that way. The town's gonna pay some cost eventually on infrastructure somewhere. You may not pay it on that street, but they're gonna have to redo all the poles from there to Brockton, all the water to Brockton, they're gonna have to rip up 27. There will be town costs.
The town doesn't pay anything for electrical, that's the electric company. So we're speaking specifically to costs that the town would absorb, and perhaps water, but even that, the water department has an ability to charge for connections. We don't have town sewer, so whoever builds would be required to take care of that themselves. And electric and gas are on the homeowners, just like they are now. The town doesn't pay anything in Hanson for anybody to connect to those utilities.
But the last question I have, this is whoever came up with this, but like, I get the laws requiring zoning in the area, but is there a law with, say this is, I'm just making up, it's 20 acres and you're putting 100 homes on it, where's the math that this town can support that? Where's the math that we can support 100 homes with water, power, gas, sewer.
You have a firm grasp of the obvious. This is what we're saying.
Yeah.
We're saying, we're not in favor of this.
Yeah, no,
We're
I'm
not.
just saying.
So you're arguing all the arguments that we've already
Oh,
had.
no, but I mean, this fact sheet's not from the state.
It absolutely, we didn't say it was.
Okay.
No, this is from.
It came from various
Okay.
people on Facebook asking these questions, and, you know, we're not inventing it, we're trying to answer
Yeah,
those
to
questions.
be honest with you, the myths, we probably could have gone on for 4 more pages of myths, but these were just like sort of the top things that people had talked about. So,
Madam Chair, if I could
Yeah.
offer something again. Sir, what's your name?
Bill. Bill.
Bill, how you doing? Joe Campbell, I'm actually the chair of the planning board. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that this forum has the opportunity to do is not jump ahead. Your first statement, or inclusive in your first statement, one of the things, the first things that you said is, I build
I do
these.
think we need to wait to take.
I'm part of these projects in other towns. And I just want to be very clear. There's no project being built.
No, I know.
No, oh, wait, sir, just wait. I don't want to hear, no, I don't want to hear, no, which way is it? I am not mishearing you. What I am hearing from you is you're giving an impression to the panel or anybody that's listening to this that there is actively a project going on, and that's absolutely not the case. There's no permit that's been requested, there's no building for anything. So we want to make sure that we are clear and that this forum is able to present the facts, and the facts are the facts. The facts are that there's nothing before the town of Hanson Town Hall in any capacity as of today or any foreseeable future of a project being built. So we want to be cautious of that, very cautious of that. The only thing that is right now before the town that's going to be moved to the town meeting is a zone. That's it.
This is
Agreed?
all about
Is that
zoning.
agreed?
I agree. This
Good,
is all about
wonderful.
zoning, but the project will come. Okay?
Appreciate the opinion, but let's stick with
It's an
facts.
opinion. If you zone it, if you build it.
We just want to stick with the facts. Well, we also, just to clarify with that, and not to go, again, not to go through debate back and forth, just to clarify with that, the town of Hanson also has an adult entertainment district. But we don't have an adult entertainment building. So just to get to your point, you're saying that it's going to be built.
That's a bad analogy.
It's not a bad analogy. You compared a project with a zone. So I'm going to fire back with that same thing, project and a zone. So let's just make sure we stick with the facts.
Zoned,
So,
once this is zoned like the other towns, then they're gonna move forward with a project
No.
and put a package.
So the current zoning proposal right now has always been quote-unquote zoned, always been zoned. It's always been zoned as a residential buildable district. It's all, would you agree with that? It's all, there's no land in the town of Hanson that doesn't have some kind of zone applied to it, is that correct?
excuse me, I do realize that people feel passionate.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
But
I just wanna make sure that we
would
stick with
really
facts.
like to have the opportunity for us to go through this. And it's clear you've got objections, and that's certainly your prerogative, but it's not an exercise tonight for us to simply answer one person's objectives all night long. We really need to get through to try to get some information out. That's what our objective is, and we're going to try to achieve that.
Okay. Perfect, great page. All right, so we're going to continue on preserving the town character. Under the myth, we will completely lose the character of our town. Under the fact, modest 2 to 3-story buildings located in a specifically designated zone ensures that we maintain local aesthetics while achieving required housing density. Under the site plan review control, under the myth, this act means the town loses all control. The fact is, site plan reviews by our local zoning board of appeals ensures the town's control building appearance and layout to protect community values. Under the minimal impact on schools, this is a big one. Our schools will not be able to support the new children that the MBTA Community Act will bring. Under the fact, new housing has little effect on school enrollment, which depends more on the demographics and affordability. This zone is not being designated as exclusively low income or affordable.
Okay. Go to the field real quick.
As of right zoning, can someone explain that? So that we can all understand it.
We're going to get into that when we get into the explanation of how the zone was created.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so why our proposed area makes sense. So underutilized area opportunity. The targeted area is underutilized, offering a prime chance for private investment and growth. Benefits of multifamily housing. Allow multifamily housing attracts new development that supports local businesses and improves property values. Under preserving our neighborhood character, development in the specific area supports revitalization and does without changing the character of other established neighborhoods. In compliance with the MBTA Act, the plan ensures practical compliance with the MBTA Communities Act, promoting sustainable growth with the absolute minimum amount of impact we could design under the Act. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of the area that is set for the zone. I know it's hard to see, but you can see up towards the center, the MBTA station. There's a yellow line that kind of goes around the slide. This area right in the middle is the main area of the zone. Right now, this is the main area of the zone. You can see its location to High Street. And the majority of this land is privately owned. So there's the developer, the owners of this land have made a statement that they have no desire or there's no plans to sell the land or develop it. We'll make a whole lot of questions. So as you can see, we see Main Street, MBTA station. This is the area right here that's covered. Okay, why MBTA zoning compliance matters for Hanson. Grant funding overview. Hanson's received over 40 grants, totaling more than $2.5 million from 2020 to 2024, supporting multiple town departments. Departmental support. The grants have supported departments like planning, police, fire, library, IT, council on aging, and board of health. The importance of compliance. Maintaining MBTA zoning compliance is critical to remain eligible for future state grant funding and support town progress. And pending funds utilization. Over $400,000 in awarded funds are pending use for upcoming projects, enhancing infrastructure and community service. So some of the major grants that we have received: pedestrian and traffic safety, the Complete Streets Grant of $398,000 funded pedestrian and traffic safety improvements in the town. Energy efficiency enhancements, which is the Green Communities Grant, totaling $473,000, which supported energy efficiency upgrades in municipal buildings and covered a whole new HVAC heat pump system for the town hall. And under additional funding, emergency and firefighter support, FEMA firefighter assistance grant of $202,000 helped enhance firefighting capabilities and emergency preparedness. And additional funding sources. We have other grants like the Community Compact, the State 911, and the One Stop for Growth contributed over $720,000 for planning and environmental projects. What's at risk if Hanson does not comply? The loss of grant funding. The failure to meet compliance requirements by December 31 of 2025 will result in the loss of over $1.5 million in critical grant funding, which jeopardizes key initiatives across the town. State program ineligibility. Non-compliance may render Hanson ineligible for essential state programs, cutting off support for infrastructure upgrades, public safety enhancements, and economic development efforts. And the impact on the community services. Without these funds, Hanson faces delays or cancellations of vital projects, reduced service quality, and long-term setbacks for residents who rely on these programs. And with the grant loss overview, the potential non-compliance with MBTA communities law risks multiple grants for Hanson in FY26. Funding for infrastructure, the loss includes over $600,000 for sidewalks and site development planning grants, police and road grants, grants for police building upgrades, equipment, and road repairs total of over $280,000, which is at risk. And the impact on public services. Grant losses would hinder infrastructure improvements and public service enhancements in Hanson. So on this page, for FY26, the town has actually applied for a number of grants, and this will show we've applied for $2.3 million in grants, which includes open space and recreation plan, housing production plan, Main Street sidewalks, Hawks Ave, which is like a brownfields redevelopment, 228 High Street, which is the former Plymouth County Hospital site, Pratt Place Culvert for ecological restoration, 212 Industrial Boulevard, which is a site readiness grant. So all of these grants are in jeopardy right now. We are not considered eligible because we're not in MBTA compliance. Under the last page, this is going to show grant loss for us. So the state currently has a MBTA Communities Catalyst Fund, which supports infrastructure grants for communities that are MBTA compliant. It ranges anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million. Hanson's not eligible for any of that. And then the grants that we had just talked about, Hawks Ave, the One Stop, 228 High Street, 0 West Washington Street, municipal sewer study, pedestrian improvements, which includes the sidewalks, and then the One Stop Hawks Ave land acquisition that would help us with what to do with that land. We also know that our police department received notice, they received a letter that they're not going to be eligible for $25,000, which funds their bulletproof vests. And also Chapter 90, which is our road money, the supplemental roadway repairs. We're no longer eligible for that. That's a loss of about $170,000 that the town would use to fund road repairs. So that is right now 1.1 million that we have lost due to this, and it's going to continue to increase.
Okay. And so then we're going to have Tony talk about.
I'm going to have our town planner, Tony DeFrayas, talk about how he came about with, how the planning department came about with this area for the zone.
Good evening. My name is Tony DeFries. I'm the town planner for the town of Hanson. First, I'll answer the gentleman in the front row's question regarding what is as of right. So this is a multifamily district which must allow multifamily housing as of right, meaning that the construction and occupancy of the multifamily housing is allowed in that district without the need to obtain any discretionary permit or approval, meaning special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Part of the area down along Main Street and along East Washington Street is in what's known as our flex overlay zone. And within that zone, a person can either utilize the zoning that is underlying, which could be a residence zone, or they could apply the flex overlay zoning, which requires a special permit from the zoning board of appeals. With the creation of this overlay district, it would be an as of right. So a developer or applicant would apply to the building department for a building permit. They would also file with the zoning board for site plan review. So the zoning board would look at the project as far as parking, being sure that it complies with our zoning bylaw for that overlay district, which is the same thing that we have right now for our flex overlay district. If you go into our zoning bylaw and you look at the flex overlay district, you'll see that it has requirements for frontage, lot area, parking, etc. This overlay district would have the same thing. There'd be requirements for anyone applying to do anything in that zone. Only difference is they wouldn't be required to have a special permit to get it done. It would be an as of right, but they would still be subject to that site plan review, which allows the zoning board to control and be sure that it meets the zoning for the area and meets the criteria that we put in our bylaw. As far as the determination of how this zone came about, the town of Hanson was granted technical assistance grants, 2 of them, each being $20,000 through the Mass Housing. So what that allowed was for the hiring of a consultant. First was Old Colony Planning Council, and then the second was a company called VHB. And they worked with us to input all the information. The state, in essence, has a computer program, and all the information is input into that program. And we determine the sort of perimeter or outline of that zone. All that information gets plugged in, and then it determines whether that zone is in compliance. The zone itself has to be a minimum of 50 acres. It has to have developable land. In other words, we couldn't turn around and put this zone over McQuon Pond and say, hey, we can build. It has to be something that's can allow for some building. The reality is the site constraints, whatever properties are within that zone, will govern what it actually can be built there. Any project that would come into town would still be subject to the Wetlands Protection Act and the Conservation Commission, would still be subject to Title V, which governs septic systems. Any of those regulations still apply in full force. There's no, I'm going to call it variances or waivers. They have to follow those laws. So that information was put into the computer. They took a look at it, and thus coming up with the zone that we have. If you look at the map that was shown on the screen within half a mile, you'll see that half a mile from the train station, there are a lot of either large tracts of land that are wooded. A lot of them have a lot of resource areas, aka wetlands. And then there's Main Street and High Street and Phillip Street. If you go along Main Street, you would have the potential of, in essence, if you put it along Main Street as a one corridor, if you will, you could run into literally every structure on Main Street being removed and turned into a duplex or a quadplex. So one thought with the process was looking at the site and all that property there, it's heavily wooded. If a project was to come into that area, the project could be buffered within the woods, sort of out of sight, out of mind. That was the process for obtaining what you see on the map before you. We did get, we submitted our zone and our bylaw that controls the zone to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, also known as HLC. And they took a look at our zone, and they said they only had like 5 points, which we addressed. And they were okay with what we had. And all that is just preliminary. You would send it to them so that they can give you an idea that you're on the right track. And if and when it was adopted by the town, and it went to them, there would be minimal comments to be addressed. So that's how we came up with that designation for that zone.
Well, I think also maybe mention the hearings and, you know,
Yes, so as part of the process, any zoning amendment requires a public hearing. So there's a lot of different things that people hear. There's the Zoning Act, 40B, 40Y, 40R. There's a slew of terms that are out there. 40A is the Massachusetts Zoning Act. That was the legislation that created zoning in Massachusetts, and it was created by the legislature, and it was created in the 50s, and it was adopted by towns in the early 50s. Hanson adopted it, I believe, in 1956. So that was a law that, in essence, a guide, and then each community crafted a local zoning bylaw to fit their community. As part of the Zoning Act, any amendment or new zoning bylaw under Section 5 requires that first thing is that it be submitted to the Select Board for their review. The Select Board then in turn has to give it to the Planning Board. The Planning Board is then required to hold a public hearing. And we began the public hearing process in February of 2022. And we went through the process and then provided a report to the Select Board, and then it moved on to the meeting in May of 2023, where town meeting voted no. So now the Select Board has decided to bring it back. Again, we had public hearings, and the Planning Board is required, because it was within 2 years of the last time it went before town meeting, to provide some sort of recommendation. Because the report, when the Planning Board provides a report on a zoning amendment, they can either give an oral report, a written report, or no report at all. So they were required, but when it's a 2-year or what they consider a repetitive application, the Planning Board must provide some kind of, some type of recommendation, which they did. And so now it went back to the Select Board, who has put it on the warrant for the town meeting in October for the town citizens to consider.
Thank you, Mr. DeVries. And so one of the questions that we've gotten asked is, didn't we already vote on this? Why are you guys bringing it back? And we're bringing it back because the Select Board, it's our job to make sure that we're looking out for our legal defense and anything that the town may get sued for. And since the last vote that was taken, a couple things have happened. We had joined a suit against the state saying that this was an unfunded mandate, and we lost. We were, it was a couple of other towns, a couple of them local, that were involved. And the judge basically said, I kind of understand what you're saying, but it's hard to prove, because what is the town going to be made to pay for? You haven't made your case. I don't see that. So that case was thrown out, or we didn't win, I should say. And then Rep. Sweezy had put together legislation, actually three, possibly even 4 bills, in various ways that would have either deconstructed MBTA community, or changed it, or revised it, or completely struck it down, and none of those have gotten links yet. And it's difficult to say if they really will. I just spoke to him today at a 9/11 ceremony, and it's uncertain. But the Select Board did write letter of support to be read into testimony, and I think Justin was there, so probably you heard our letter of testimony being read in. And so we've taken it as far as we can at this point. We, as I mentioned earlier, did have a conversation with the Attorney General, And they're now getting to the point where they're saying, we're giving people this one last pass at town meetings that people are going to have in between now and the end of the year, and then we will be suing the towns that aren't complying. Up until this point, they've been, I don't want to say coy, but they haven't been quite that explicit. And they certainly weren't that explicit about hiring a third party to designate the section. So we've got all of those things that have changed, and then in addition to that, we actually started to feel the sting of the grants that we are losing. And again, it was pretty painful because they were saying, guess what, you've won this grant. Oh, but you're not compliant with MBTA, so you're not going to get that grant. I mean, several of them hurt, but the one that probably hurt the most was we had one through Green Communities that was for the police station, and the prior police chief and this police chief, our newly hired police chief, have been struggling with the HVAC system at the police station. When it was originally built, it was, let's say it wasn't sized properly, let's say it had more of a residential HVAC system put on it as opposed to commercial. It's not sustainable. They're paying all kinds of money every year to try to repair this HVAC system. So we thought, the town can't afford to redo this HVAC system because it's huge money. We will apply through the Green Communities because they really want us to have the mini splits and all of that, and it'll be a win-win. And the good news is we won the grant, but the bad news is because we're not compliant, they pulled it back on us. So enough things that had changed that the board said, we can't, as a board, we can't just keep deciding unilaterally that we're not going to bring this back to the voters to make a decision on. If people want to stay the course, if voters want to stay the course and they don't want to adopt MBTA community, that's fine. It's our job to, to do the best we can with what we're given and the results of the vote. At the town meeting in October, we have the MBTA community article, and then followed by that, if people don't want to adopt MBTA community, we have an article to give us funding to fight it. We're going to need additional legal resources, and our normal legal counsel that we use has said this is not something that you would engage us to do. You will need specialized counsel for this. And so we're just sort of trying to present to the voters, here's where we're at, here's what's changed since the last vote, here's the facts. We're becoming one of a dwindling number of towns that are fighting this. So it's up to the voters, and we'll do the best we can with whatever the results are. But I do want to emphasize that the area that the planning board came up with for the zone was not something, Mr. DeFries said it in maybe like 5 minutes or less, but we're talking about meeting after meeting, hours of the planning board talking about how could we take something that we're not necessarily, we'll say, enthusiastic about, and how can we do the absolute best for the town of Hanson given the constraints. And so when you look at that area, it's an area, I'm on the Economic Development Committee, and one of our goals in the Economic Development Committee is to try to clean up the blight along Main Street. But we need people to come in with money to clean up essentially the old Ocean Spray building is really one of the buildings. And FYI, the gentleman who owns that already had a permit to put apartments, and he just never moved forward with it, but there was permitting already done there. So I think, when we look at any area in town that probably needs some, a little boost, it's definitely along Main Street. Ideal scenario would be mixed use, similar to what the 2 new buildings were that were put there, because we want to attract businesses too. We're not necessarily saying, oh, let's just build apartments. We would really love to see new businesses along there. And he's been, the gentleman who built the 2 new buildings has been super successful in getting people, it's 100% occupied, getting people, new businesses on that first floor, and then young couples and retirees on in the apartments. So if we look at that area, it is a lot of wetlands, and it is densely wooded. And not all of the land that would be considered that 50 acres is easily accessible. That paired with the fact that we do not have town sewer, that's going to be a huge cost for whoever decides to build there. We've already seen other people who dabbled with perhaps building in that area, and then when they were told that we don't have town sewer, and we're one of the few, like it's, again, a very dwindling number of towns that don't have it, people were like, we're out, that's too much. So I just want to emphasize that it was a lot of thought that went into the area that was designated. So.
A quick question, this is all about zoning, but in the MBTA zoning, do they allow for mixed use? Is that language in there? Because mixed use is great, and that's beautiful. If they did that to all of Main Street, I'm sure no one would have a problem with that. But is that mixed use language in the zoning law for the?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah. And you know, just even if you just look at the town, right? I guess the way I look at it, since the conversation with the Attorney General, I really wasn't looking at it before this way, but you know, the thing I had heard a lot of people say is, well, we're going to lose control over, you know, what goes there. I think Mr. DeFries did a nice job of outlining, we're not losing all control. We've still got conservation, which is huge, and very much in play in this area. We've still got the Zoning Board of Appeals, but more importantly, we're the ones right now, if we decide to vote this in, that are going to decide where this area is going to be located. I don't think we want to get to a point where we're going to have the state telling us where it's going to be. I mean, as galling as it is to be where we are right now, it's going to be more galling to have them point to where we're going to put that area. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. One more question.
Yeah.
So if this, hypothetically, if the state came in and said, hey, this is it, we're picking the area, I mean, in this box here, you have people's residence and homes, how, they're just gonna take people's housing?
No, sir, and again, this is the,
zoning.
no, it's zoning. Nobody's being required to build, nobody's, you know, like, nobody's gonna be knocking in eminent domain, taking people's houses, none of that.
But if my home was in this zone, so now.
If your home was in that zone, I mean, in a way, if your home was in that zone, right, and the state came in, or even this passes, you might be like, well, this is great. I wasn't
Yeah,
thinking.
knock it down and build a four-story.
You might do that. You might do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a comment, I just gotta say, I'm very proud of you from Hanson. I'm very proud to feel very represented by everyone on this board. You know, it's easy for the citizen to vote no, and then you've been fighting a good fight and watched us closely for about 2 years. And so I just want to show my appreciation for that. And it stinks losing the grant money, but like I'm happy to pay more taxes. Because the two things that are concerning to me, it's not more houses and stuff, we're doing that. It's the lack of control with the state mandate and stuff, which we have expressed that about. And also just the density of it, of 2,000 people, I think is the max unit. And again, as you planned it in this plan, wetlands, and it might not reach that far, but that's like, 20.
It's 750, just to be clear.
750.
Yeah, 750. 2,000 would be, I mean, and I'm not saying like, oh, 750 is a great number either. But, and again,
I was thinking.
that's the max number.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, almost, they'd have to be a lot more, there'd have to be less wetlands. There'd have to be easier access. And you'd have to have people who are wanting to sell their land. And it's anecdotal, like there was a gentleman who showed up at, I guess it was one of the hearings you guys had, right, Mr. Campbell and Mr. DeFries? It was like at a planning board meeting, I think. The gentleman came who owned a big chunk of that property, like almost half of that property, I think. I don't know his name or anything, but I guess it's a family trust, and he was like, look, I'm giving this land to my son, I don't plan on building on this, like, are you gonna make us build on it? And we're like, no, we're not making anybody build on this, like, no, like, in fact, we would kind of prefer that you not build on it if that, if that's not, what you wanna do. So, again, it's not contractual, they're not bound by that, they could leave the meeting and decide otherwise, but, and then we had another gentleman, come to one of our select board meetings, and he owned a smaller piece, but it was like 22 acres of it, and he was asking the same thing, and he's like, are you guys gonna make us build? I'm like, we're not making anybody build, like, you still have all of your rights as a property owner to do what you want with that. It just means that if you own in that area, then in a way, I guess you'd be advantaged, right? If you want to build multifamily. And another really interesting thing, and I will get to you in a second, I see you, is I had an interesting conversation with our town planner earlier in the week, and he said, how many multifamilies do you think Hanson has? And, like, how many do you think we have? And I'm like, well, obviously 3. Like, I can only think of the 3, like, kind of down in that Phillips and Main Street area. And he was like, no, Laura, 299. And I said, are you kidding me? And he said, no, there's 299 multi-family housing units. And those are just the ones that we know of. Of course, we know there's apartments that are, I don't want to say illegal, but maybe not permitted, or maybe not fully aware of. But that's a lot of multi-housing. So we already have multi-family housing in town. And I know people get nervous about what's the impact of multi-housing. To me, as an almost 30-year resident, I was shocked to hear about that number, but then the more I thought about it, and I think I mentioned it to you, I said, okay, now that I'm thinking about it, I know this place is an apartment building, there's a couple of apartments, this place. So it is something that has, been sort of here all along. Yes, just Mr. DeFrayis. And then I did promise this gentleman, he had a question. Yeah.
No, real question. So I understand that the fight that we're fighting is all about the zoning, whether we zone it or they zone it for us. But once that's done, say hypothetically tomorrow, this is the zone. So are there laws or with this whole process next where the state's gonna pick and go, okay, you've got 2 years to build these 750 persons?
No, there's no.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, just,
So, there's a lot of that. This is an overlay district. It's a zone no different than any zoning town. So for instance, we have Residence A Zone, B, Commercial Industrial, Flex Overlay. It's no different than any of those zones. If you look at our zoning bylaw, you'll see those districts, and you'll see that there's regulations that you have to follow within each of those districts. Frontage requirements, lot area requirements, height requirements. This will be an overlay district. It has requirements. The requirements we wrote. We decided what's the frontage, what's the area, how tall can the building be, what's the required parking spaces. That's everything that we wrote in with assistance from town council. So the state gave a template and said, here's a template, something that's at least a guide that you can use. But we wrote the bylaw that goes to that zone as if we were to write a bylaw to any zone that we created. Let's say tomorrow Hanson decided we want to create a Residence C zone. And we want to amend the bylaw. We're going to create regulations that go and regulate that zone. And that's exactly what this does. There's regulations within this overlay district that anyone who decided to build in that overlay district would have to follow. Parking requirements, height requirements, frontage requirements, area requirements, all of it. On top of that, they still have to meet any of the state requirements related to wetlands, Title V, which is septic, anything. All those are still in place. So we wrote it. The state didn't tell us, oh, your zone, the only thing the state told us is your zone has to be 50 acres, and they put a number. Your zone should be able to sustain 750. But the reality is the site conditions, if anyone develops in that zone, determine exactly what they might get out of it. Even the state knows they created this number that is not a realistic number. It might be realistic in a dense city situation, but not in the town. So they needed a place to start, and that's what they did, is they started there at 750, which seems like an overwhelming number. What they did is they broke down each community that had some type of transit, rapid transit, commuter rail, town adjacent. We're a commuter rail station. So they figured 15% of your housing stock that you have existing, or 750 units, depending on which one's bigger. How did they come to that? They took the housing stock number, which was over 3,000, figured 15%, and that was from 2020, and that would have been about 480 unit capability, or floor as they call it. The 750 comes from taking 50 acres, multiplying it by 15 units per acre as the density, and you come up with 750. So they said, well, which number's bigger? 750, obviously. Okay, so that's what you have to kind of follow. But it's not a realistic number if the site conditions do not allow, if there's, and again, as was said before, the regulations do not require that the town upgrade the infrastructure. Anything like that would be on any kind of developer that might come in and do it. But if the town doesn't have sufficient water, the town's saying we don't have enough water, you know. There's other zoning, for instance, a lot of folks hear about 40B, affordable housing. That's a different Mass General law. That allows for 8 to 12 units per acre, depending on what you do, and that exists today. So any person that went into that area could either today, if they did it today, they could either go what the current zoning is, residential, or they could come in with a comprehensive permit and still get a lot of units per acre. But that would go through the zoning board of appeals. So,
This is great, and I understand all that, drug control, frontages, all that kind of stuff, but my question was, in the MBTA Communities Act, there's no language in there that once the zone is created by the town or by them, that there's a timeline that, okay, we have to, our rules, you know, build this.
there is nothing that
There's
says...
no language in there.
There's no language in black and white, and you can go online and look at it. It's, if you go to mass.gov and you punch in MBTA zoning, what you want to look for is 760 CMR. That's Code of Massachusetts Regulation. That's the regulations that the state had to repromulgate. That's where the court, the SJC, told them that they hadn't done it right. And within those regulations, it explains and outlines what is required. So anyone can go online and find that. And we may have it on our planning board webpage, but if not, I'll make sure that it gets on there. But if folks go to those, they can actually read those regulations, and it'll tell you exactly what we're supposed to do and can do and so forth.
If I could walk through a theory of what would actually happen, I think. So let's say we pass that, and then that gets zoned appropriately. At that point, and I don't think it would happen immediately, because like Lexington is howling, Newton is howling from this bill because they're building there. I used to do construction for years. When the crews and the work dries up, you go on to the next one. And then whoever has the property, and if it changes hands and stuff, then they would just be getting constant offers of money, millions of dollars, whatever, and then they would just write it into the cost and then just build a more luxurious thing, or they go up another level. You'd build it into the project, whatever the cost is associated with that. And then also, potentially, if the state wasn't getting bites and then there was like a downturn, they would have like grant money. If you want to build in a Chapter 40A scenario, you would get funding money for your building, and then there might be something like that the state would do. To me, that's what is the most logical threat to the build-up. Is that accurate, or where am I on?
Well, it's like anything else. All those properties within that district are all privately owned, so it's up to, obviously it's up to the landowner.
Sure.
If this was to pass, sure. If someone came in with a bucket of money and they said, well, I'm going to move off to Florida now, and they sold that property. So it's all up to them if they wanted to do so. Then there's also, as you're well aware, the housing market. Is there a demand? You know, if a developer is not going to build housing, if they're not going to be able to sell it and make money.
Yep.
And then is there a interest in Hanson? You know, if a developer says, you know, Hanson's a nice town, but, or they might say, well, you know what, I don't think I'll make any money there. And then, so it's all going to depend on the private sector in the market. As you're well aware, you know, what transpires. So it, yeah, and we do have height restrictions, which is the same height restrictions we have now. We don't allow for more than, I believe, it's 40 feet high. Okay, so we don't allow for anything higher than that. So we minimize, you know.
Can I add that to a little bit, you know, from a real estate perspective, right? You're only going to get so much for a condo in Hanson, right? I mean, there's a threshold there. I mean, you can only, you know, you're not going to be able to sell, you know, a $2 million condo in downtown Hanson. So, you know, economics definitely a factor.
Yeah, again, the private sector would drive anything in this area, but whatever person came in would still have to follow the rules that we set for that area.
Right.
Just one last question. So say it gets zoned out, do we have the ability through you guys to, they throw the 750 out, but can the town of Hanson say a certain percentages has to be mixed use by the developer? Mixed use is a great idea. I mean, it works for many reasons because the town gets tax money from businesses. But is there a way that we can write a bylaw once, whatever direction this goes in, that percentage of it has to be mixed use tied to the 750 people?
Well, our bylaw does allow, the way it's written, does allow for a mixed use. At a later date, if the town wanted, so mixed use is already in there, but if the town wanted, we already have a flex overlay zone, and that flex overlay zone allows for mixed use, which is what you see down on Main Street. So the town at some point could also say, okay, well, we're going to expand that flex overlays down over the MBTA zone, you know. But we do have it already in there for a mixed use. And one other item that I think is out there is a lot of folks think that it's all affordable housing. Not true.
The opposite.
Yeah.
If you go into 760 CMR section 72.041B, does not include any express requirement or authorization for an MBTA community to require affordable units in a multifamily housing project that is allowed as of right. We are not required to have affordable units or affordable housing in that district. We have put in, but communities can put in for affordable housing 10%. If they want to go above that number, the state says, well, you have to do a feasibility study to prove that it's cost effective. What we've done within our zoning bylaw is we do allow for 10%, but we also have put in language for what's called fee in lieu of. What Hanson would do is create a housing trust. And if a developer came into that zone and said, I do not want to put in any affordable units, they would give us funds that would go into the housing trust, and then the town, usually the Hanson Housing Authority, would use those funds or utilize those funds to create affordable housing, such as like Meeting House Lane, or the LZ Thomas, or whatever properties they control, or if they wanted to go out and purchase a site and do housing. So there is no requirement under these regulations that we must put in affordable housing. We have put that language in because, as most folks may know or not know, each community in Massachusetts is required to have a 10% affordable housing. Hanson's going to be at about 5%. One way to sort of get to that number quicker is if in situations like this where you have like a multifamily, you put that in there and you can sort of get to your 10%. Because once you get to that 10%, then the community can say, we no longer want any additional affordable housing projects. Or if one of those projects is large enough, and you meet your quota, let's say, for the year, you can get safe harbor. So I just want to clear that up. A lot of folks think that, oh, you have to. No, we do not have to. But we did put it in there, and we have language for it, but we also have language that it could be a fee in lieu of, and that could go into a housing trust. We would just have to create the housing trust.
affordable housing isn't just for low income, too, it's for elderly and, right? I mean, you could have.
Yeah,
For
so
55.
a lot of folks, low income and affordable, there's a lot of terms out there. Affordable housing, whether it's under this or whether it's under what's known as 40B, are for folks that meet a certain income level, like 80%. They have to work because they have to pay the rent. They have to, if it's a single family home or a condo, they have to work because they have to pay their mortgage. It's just they get a discount on the price of the unit versus a market rate. So, and yes, you can have different projects that have age restrictions. We're not allowed to age restrict, so we couldn't just say this overlay district must be from only 55 and older. We can't do that. But there are other types of zoning, such as the 40B, where you can have projects that are age restricted. We have one now going up on Liberty Street that is an over 55 40B project, which is a comprehensive permit project. So some of those are affordable units. That just means that the folks that are going to move in there are going to get their units that are affordable for less of a price than the market rates.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I want to take a few moments. First, I want to reflect and say right back to your comment about the time that we spent on this. You know, everybody that has had any take in this, thank you for that. Unbelievably, thank you for that. That's reflected back from all the electorate and all the town employees back to the constituents and the citizens of Hanson, such as yourselves. Thank you for coming here this evening. Thank you for listening at home or watching this again. Thank you. It means that you're engaged. So, Madam Chair, I apologize, or if I seem elevated at all, it's because some of the things that we've had to deal with, and I always want to bring that back about the facts. We have had to deal 2.5 years of, some, rhetoric that's out there instead of having the town planner who my tax dollars pay for his salary. Instead of having the town planner doing the work he's supposed to be doing, he's having to deal with things that should never even come to his office because of the fact that this has now come about. So we've been dealing with this for quite a long time. The town itself, over multiple years, has had plenty of opportunities to have discussions at the town meetings, to invest in ourselves. I've even said it myself at a town meeting, we need to start investing in ourselves. From the planning board perspective, there was multiple marks along a timeline that I think many of us were looking at. Multiple marks were indicators. At the beginning of this, those indicators were very small. How much is this going to grow? How much is this going to grow where it's now going to start impacting all of our daily or our monthly agendas? And that started to really snowball about 1.5 years ago. One of the first indicators that I looked at myself, one of the first things that I wanted to see was, when are we going to start seeing the statements come in of, is the town of Hanson compliant? And it took a little bit of time. It absolutely took a little bit of time. The town planner knew that it was something I was looking for, and the moment that he had an application for a grant that had a small checkbox in the bottom corner that said, is the town of Hanson MBTA compliant, he notified me immediately. It made me open my eyes a little bit more. The second that we started to see all of the surrounding towns gain momentum in regards to the fact that this is something that really nobody, I don't think I've seen one person stand up and say, yes, this is wonderful for our town. When that started to gain momentum, we looked at that as another tick mark. This is starting to become a juggernaut. Then there's other aspects of it that really took over, and there was a lot of misinformation that was placed out there, a lot of information that was combined. And thank you to all the town citizens that understand and come and educate themselves about 40B or Section 8 or the zoning acts and how these things happen. And for those that also pay attention to the town budgets, we've seen the finance committee and the finance department over and over and over again talking about some of the woes that we're going to be experiencing here in the town of Hanson. We've had the highway department looking to invest in themselves. We've had the fire chief, we've had the police chief, we've had everybody to this point, and we've pushed and pushed and pushed as hard as we can. But we've seen these tick marks along this whole entire journey. The planning board is an excellent representation of the people of the town of Hanson, from seniors to even our younger generation now. We have such a great conglomerate of town citizens that the thinking that has gone into this and the collaboration with the town planner's office and our taxpayer dollars paying everybody to be able to put this forward with factual information, it's at a point now where we need to start looking at what hill are we going to die on? What sword are we going to fall on? Where is this going to go from the next perspective? And by no means am I trying to push any agenda. As a matter of fact, we have divorced ourselves quite a bit from other entities in and around the state to keep and stay away from having that agenda pushed from both sides of this, whether it be proponents for it or those that are against it. The boards have maintained citizen perspective. We've been always very vocal about citizens' perspective, and we've put that forward. We've been held to the rulings of the repetitive petitions and the select board bringing this back before us again. There were 4 other entities that could have suggested it. But we need to really look at this from a perspective of where things are going to go from here. The last tick on the timeline that me, myself personally, and I think other members of the board, the planning board, the last thing that we were looking for is the things that we just saw very recently. And that was just how far is this going to go? How much is the heat going to get turned up on this particular issue? It is on fire, ladies and gentlemen. For anybody that doesn't think, or anybody that wants to look at the state, or anybody of that matter, talking about a threat or anything like that, we're at the point now that I can tell you wholeheartedly, it's not a matter of if, but when. One of the things that I am looking for last in regards to this whole entire journey is, can the town of Hanson be the last on that list? And I really would like to have everybody have that thought in their mind. Can the town of Hanson be the last on that list? Do we want to be the ones that they blast up onto a poster, a scoreboard somewhere? With not having the funding for the litigation, another tick mark, not gaining the support to be able to fight this, it's very dangerous. We are in very dangerous waters. People talk all the time about the politics in the state and the politics in the town and what's yet to come. I'm going to tell you my own personal philosophy. So this isn't talking from a planning board perspective. This is talking from a town citizen. I'm looking at this as that fact that I'm going to take this fight to where it needs to go, and that's to the ballot. That's to the legislation. There was a town hall meeting where we tried to push this. I'm trying to push this over to the legislation again. I want to thank Representative Sweezy for carrying that torch. He heard that message. We didn't have a discussion about it, but his actions after that town meeting said to me that he heard that message. So that is gaining ground. But at this point, all of the 2.5 years that we've been dealing with this, really spend a few moments, separate the individual sides of this, go to a 500-foot overview and a 30,000-foot overview, and let's collectively decide on where this is going. But decide on the facts, because the fight, the true fight, for me anyway, is the next step after this. I appreciate everybody listening.
I mean, I think that's a mic drop moment right there. I can't think of anything that I would say, but I don't know if anybody's got any questions. Any more questions? That was just a warm-up. I mean, that was amazing, Mr. Campbell. Did anybody have anything else that they wanted to add or say? Yeah.
I really would like just to circle back on the thought that the governor is up for re-election And, you know, if we wait it out, maybe this will go away. This is not going away. It's a law. The Supreme Court of Massachusetts has determined this is a law that's constitutional, and the Attorney General can sue municipalities that are not compliant. So waiting this out to see if the new governor is elected and to see if this is going to go away, it's a law. It's not going to go away just like that. So trying to wait is really not the best answer. Thank you.
However, we can hope that we can get better governorship in place that might be able to amend it and fix it afterwards. Because we're not going to be building anything, we're just setting up a zone, that's it.
Anything else? Did anybody have any, yes?
You know, it sounds to me like this legislation is going to end up in the ZBA, in the comprehensive permitting, you know, and all of that. So I wonder if we could discuss a little bit about the implications of that. I don't know if, you know, like, is there something we can do with the ZBA to make sure that what gets built is in keeping with the community, I guess is a better way to put
Yes, I mean, the town does have some control over what the development, whether it's building or development, would look like. So we do have a say there. I believe we may even have some language in our bylaw regarding that, but again, that's up on the webpage as well. I would urge anyone to read what the zoning bylaw that we're proposing for this district says. And again, it's all a bylaw that was written by the town. And so we control what we're letting. They being whoever the developer is, may have the right ability, but we still have a say in what it looks like.
I think that that's critically important because if it is adopted, we want to make sure that the carefully crafted language that you've got about how high the building can be, about the frontage and all of that is enforced, because you guys really were looking through the lens of how should this look in Hanson. And in order for that to be effective, we need to have our ZBA on board, so.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. If this district is to go through, the site plan review authority for this will be the planning board of Hanson.
Okay,
The
great.
planning board will be
Great, so-
the board that will be responsible for site plan review for this.
So we know you guys know your stuff, and the ZBA does as well. So I think it's just a matter of making sure that we're consistent in enforcing the regulations.
But I'd even add to that, oh, sorry. I'd even add to that, it's not just with this zoning. With any zoning or any building in the town of Hanson, the collaboration between not only the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, and a lot of people think, well, the planning board creates the rules and they just bend them. That's not true. We have great collaboration with all of our land use boards in the town of Hanson. The planning board, the zoning board of appeals, our conservation, the water department, thank you, board of health, as well as input from all the other highway department, fire department, the school department, police department, you know, from top to bottom, the IT department, from top to bottom. We, over these past years, the collaboration that has increased in our town is very good to see, ladies and gentlemen. It really is. It's very good to see. It's one of the things that I was very passionate about when I first came on board, 10 years ago. And that does exist. And that should continue, not just with this, with any zoning. And every town should be like that. We collaborate with information from towns around us. So that's something that rings true, not just with this project in and of itself. And a lot of that has to deal with some of the fine, outstanding employees that we have sitting up here this evening. We can't say thanks enough, you know, and recognize town administrator, town planner, and all those that are involved. Thank you for taking our taxpayer dollars and doing right. And that's really appreciated. It is appreciated. But that does ring true. We do have some decent collaboration. I forgot to mention the select board. They also, everybody.
We don't take it personally.
We can't ask council any questions since we met the pay.
All right. Good paper.
All right, well, we thank you, Hale and Hearty Souls, for coming out this evening and for essentially witnessing our dry run for the next 2 sessions that we'll be having. I think is the next 2 or the 29th of September and then the 2nd of October.
Right. And 6 o'clock.
Same place, but at 6 o'clock. So thanks again, and we'll tweak our presentation according to some of the questions we got tonight, because if you've got those questions, then other people are going to have them too. So thank you very much.